Hello and welcome to the debate. I'm your host Rafae Iqbal, and in today's show we'll be deliberating on two topics. The first being India's elections, as we know that it's the year of elections. They already got conducted in Pakistan and Bangladesh. Now it's India's turn, and of course America will also follow in line. If we talk regarding India's elections, the upcoming general elections, there we'll be talking about how, as we know, that the elections in India nears, there's more rhetoric that's seen against Pakistan, and specifically from one of the political parties in India. And there's also many incidents of ethnic cleansing that we've seen in the recent past regarding that as well, and we see ethnic and religious clashes happening as well. Along with that, we see that there's some reforms regarding the electoral process in India, especially the introduction of EVMs, the electronic voting machines, and also regarding the controversies regarding political funding, regarding the electoral bonds. And of course, we will also talk about how narratives have shaped up in India regarding the political parties. Of course, the BJP and the Congress, both these parties are one-on-one with each other in these elections, and we can see a lot of lambasting that's going on regarding these elections as well, and ideologies that both the parties have. Of course, there's also the Citizenship Amendment Act that relates to minorities in India. And of course, as we know that the amendment aims to provide citizenship to minority groups from neighboring countries. And there's also the talk of India pushing minorities against the wall. These are the topics and the angles we'll be deliberating on regarding the elections in India. And of course, moving on to the second segment, we'll be talking about economic challenges for Pakistan and how economy should be given priority over political interests. Of course, we see that the country has been facing economic challenges. There's a new government sworn in, and the new government has hinted towards addressing those challenges and how to tackle and move forward with those economic hardships that we see that the country will be facing. And of course, political differences should not hamper the economic growth of the country. And of course, in that regard, we have seen that one of the opposition parties, they also wrote a letter to the IMF, and they had also talked about how they would talk about ensuring political stability in the country. But of course, IMF being an international lender, it would not be concerned about the domestic politics. Of course, they encourage political stability but do not comment on any country's political affairs. In the studios, to start off our conversation, we've been joined as always by senior analyst Farrukh Pitafi. Along with that, we have been joined by geopolitical analyst Faisal. On Skype, we have been joined by Gr BALUCH, former ambassador. Along with that, we have been joined by Dr John Dayal, who is an Indian human rights activist. Regarding starting off our conversation with the first segment, the India's elections, we see that as elections in India near, we hear rhetoric against Pakistan. We see there's a whole narrative that shapes up, especially from one political party in India that is more rightly known as an extremist party with their ideologies, their Hindutva ideologies. I'll start off our conversation with Dr. John Dayal, who is an Indian human rights activist, that what are the key issues that will be dominating Indian elections? As we've seen, there's a lot of ethnic clashes going on there in the recent past as well. There's religious clashes going on there as well. And we see that regarding all these political dynamics there's a lot of concern regarding the security situation and how the elections will be conducted there as well. What's your take on how these elections are going to form up in India?
Good evening. Let me first begin by congratulating you, my three distinguished panelists, and the people of Pakistan on the successful conclusion of their elections, the installation of a new government, considerably peacefully, going against the apprehensions that were there. I think the fact that we have in the neighborhood of India a successful democratic election, so to say, is very good for the region and for democratic processes in the region. So I think highly of the Pakistan elections, despite all the issues that may have been cropped up questioning various aspects of it. what do we face in India? Because the Pakistani elections, in a way, are a benchmark, not a very high benchmark, but a benchmark against which would automatically be judged. I would rate three issues of great concern to us in India. I am a journalist. I've been observing elections since before 1971, you could say. It's more than half a century of observing all the elections. And I think that memory itself is a good database on which to talk about. What are we facing just now? We're facing a crisis of confidence in the institutions, the structures which conduct the election. We are then also facing a crisis on the environment which has been created, of which Islamophobia, anti-minorities are part. The pressure on opposition parties through the enforcement directorate, through investigation agencies, is also one of those. The election, the process of EVMs and VVPATs, which are the technical electronic machine on which you vote, and the proof that you voted and that the machine has correctly noted what you've done. We have, as you mentioned, the issue of electoral bonds, and the Supreme Court's judgments have already proved, and by 15th they will prove again, that political parties have received money from unknown sources, from shell companies, and the bulk of the money, maybe 80% of it, has gone to the BJP. That a bulk of the money also came by putting pressure, including enforcement agencies, on large corporations, which are possibly not pro-BJP to begin with. Those that were pro-BJP surely gave the bulk of the money. Then, of course, are the issues of the election itself. What do the people want from this current government, which has been ruling for 10 years? And most of us, including me, are quite sick and tired of it. On the other hand, its own followers love it. So let me just first quickly go through the crisis of confidence in the machine, not the EVM, but the election machine, which is there. We have at the moment only one election commissioner, automatically the chief election commissioner. One retired and the other quit. Why did he quit? Nobody knows. We have till 15th, when the Prime Minister will chair a meeting of the leader of the opposition and his henchman, the Home Minister, to choose the other two. I suppose by the 15th night, they would have sworn in those other two, and 16th or 17th, the elections will be announced. And 40 days from there, coinciding with all of Ramzan and much of the Christian Lent, we would have the campaign and elections maybe late April, mid-April, late April. So the schedule will begin from the 15th, when the Election Commission is complete. But the fact that it was not complete so far, the fact that rules were changed, the fact that the Chief Justice of India was removed from a membership of the committee which was to choose the election commissioners, have cast doubts on it. Eventually, I think our doubts would remain, and the elections will also be held, maybe peacefully, quite likely peacefully, because a huge amount of police presence on the ground. It's one of the biggest elections on earth ever. Maybe 80 crore, 800 million people will go to vote over 500 constituencies. The last thing are the environment in which they being held. Islamophobia is certainly one of them. And I think it's very frightening for us. The rules that have been changed, the citizenship changes, etc., are all designed to, the BJP doesn't care if the Muslims, 20% of the country, vote for it or don't vote for it. So this is, they are not crucial to it. Its vote bank is the Hindu vote bank. And Mr. Modi has been assiduously, and more so in the last 1 year, been appeasing the majority. The Ram Temple is a pious thing and nobody has dared oppose it. But the fact was that it was timed for the election campaign. It was not even complete. The economic situation is not very good. Unemployment is raging to the country, and that's the South Asian situation. We are still importing most of our fine, high-end electronics. We are also still buying a large chunk of weaponry. So here we are talking of self-sufficiency, but proving by every step that we are still far from the target. So Mr. Modi, from my point of view, goes into the elections with a handicap on fulfilled promises, on targets he set for himself, and failed on deteriorating social situation. From his side of the view, he is going into it having brought the temple to a fruition, having proved himself to be a man who is concerned and deeply concerned about the Hindu ethos and the needs of the people of the majority community.
Right, right. Dr. John, just like you mentioned that Modi is going to be going into the elections with a lot of unfulfilled promises, but we see that their campaigns do not focus on their promises that are unfulfilled. They rather focus on their narratives, their Hindutva ideology that they're propagating to the masses. But what would you say regarding their ideology that they're going forward with? It seems like they do not care about their unfulfilled promises, but they'll just be fueling their ideology that they're propagating.
Yeah. You know, from his point of view and from the RSS point of view, the biggest promise was to fulfill the demands of the majority community, which was the Ram temple, which was challenging Muslim presence in other contentious temples, including Madhya Pradesh, including two others in UP and all those. So the religious demands, what you would call communal demands, have been brought to the fore as the major demands of the people, to which he will say, I have fulfilled your demands. The demands that we think crucial, jobs, economic development, devolution of financial gains, those he has pushed into the background. The opposition parties obviously will have to take out the demands and question him, and the people would have to vote on that.
Right. I'd like to include G.R. BALUCH, former ambassador, in the conversation and ask him what are his views regarding what Dr. John just had to say and regarding the elections.
May I just make one point before I finish this? In the whole process of elections, it will be not political parties, it will be not individuals, it will be Mr. Modi versus the opposition. It's a single point. The candidates who are chosen or not chosen would be immaterial.
Right. Moving towards Dr. G.R. BALUCH, former ambassador, what's your take on the elections and how Modi is propagating their ideology to the masses instead of coming to the topic of them going into the elections with unfulfilled promises?
Yeah, you see, Mr. John pointed out a very interesting figure that it is one of the biggest democracy, one of the biggest number of voters they will be going to the vote. And democracy as a modern ethos of 21st century, democracy as a model of inclusiveness, democracy as a antidote to racism, democracy as a force of inclusion and social organization irrespective of caste, creed and faith, I think has come to a naught as far as India is concerned. Is entirely different kind of a system which is like being propagated as democracy and democratic process. It is blatantly a majoritarian process of just endorsing one man as a leader. As our friend also said that it is about Mr. Modi. So it is actually a very, very combustive combination, what we see in India as a process for the last 10 years. The communal politics, the populist politics of one man, the authoritarianism, the exclusion of all other minorities, may it be Muslims, may it be Christian, but obviously Muslims are the major target because they being the biggest minority and to some extent a bit vocal minority. So that way, I think what we see in India is not a democratic process in its classic sense, because the very premises on which this process is taking place, and the worst is that that majoritarianism is being kind of mainstreamed through different constitutional tools, with administrative tools, and now with even interfering in the institutions which are responsible for holding free and fair elections. That is the Election Commission. So if the election commissions are just round the corner and the commission is not yet ready, just because the right kind of people are not there, he has to be a saffron wearing mentally and psychologically and emotionally. Only then he will be fit to hold this post. This is the problem with the BJP. It has kind of infiltrated its ideology across the state structure. So the entire state structure of India has been polarized. It has been made into a communal kind of force, may it be police, and we see it in behavior, in their responses, may it be administration, may it be now judiciary, unfortunately, and of course, what to talk of the administrative structure down below at different levels of the government. So it's a very combustive and a very toxic combination of all the other negative elements, but democracy. So I don't know really if I would really call this entire exercise as a democratic process with all the tenets of democracy being observed, the will of the people. And I tell you what, the test of democracy is that how it takes care of the inclusion of the minority. In fact, interestingly, I would like you to take back to you to the 14 points of Qaeda-e-Azam versus the 12 points of Nehru report. That was the biggest issue of difference. Qaeda-e-Azam, in every point, he said that minorities, he did not mention Muslim. Whenever he mentioned Muslim, he said Muslims and other minorities' rights have to be protected, whether it is the local provincial legislation, whether it is a central government, whether it is a cabinet, or even the administrative structure of the state. That time, we are talking of 1936-38. So imagine the vision of order, but it is his vision and the vision of the leadership that we had. So we have these, I think, historical baggage which we had thought that would be corrected in the body politics of India, but unfortunately, a poisonous combination of communalism, a Hindutva radicalism has completely distorted the very nature of democratic process in India. And I think it's not a very good news for South Asia as a region, because obviously as a region, if we have to flourish, and you know what, I always believe, and now this is almost agreed with all the analysts, that regions prosperous together, whether it is democratically, whether it is economically or socially. Now, if a big democracy, so-called India, goes through this phase of kind of a process which is completely laced with such a bias and such a poisonous ideology, where the minorities have been excluded from the very process of democratic elections, what will be the nature of democracy and what will be the nature of the parliament, and beyond, that is the policies it will formulate and policies that it will implement. And definitely I see a dangerous place for minorities in India.
Dangerous place for minorities. Yeah, Ambassador Baloch, you have rightly pointed out, and here, I want to obviously hail Dr. Dayal as well. Whenever he is in our show, it's always an honor to listen to him, especially related to his views related to human rights, the way he promotes human rights, and the way he promotes the values of democracy. It's simply heartening to listen to him, and I always listen him and I learn from him. And here, Dr. Dayal, I have another question for you. Ambassador Baloch has pointed out, and obviously he has, brought up an issue of historic baggage as well. If we look at democratic values in today's India, there is a sense of historic baggage which we see. Of course, he has highlighted 1936 and the 1930s, obviously the 14 points of Qaid-e-Azam and then Nehru report as well. But at the same time, something was happening in Europe as well. Nuremberg laws, I'm talking about. Them Nuremberg laws, of course, we know that the Nazis, they were the ones who were behind it. And that was against one ethnic group, and that was the Jewish faith. At that time, Jews were, of course, the target in the Europe, and especially by the then Nazi Germany. They were against them, and we know that how systematically they drew them out, and of course whatever happened later on in terms of whatever happened against the Jewish faith, we all know. And don't you think that in today's India, what we see is that there is a historic baggage on the basis of course, the Muslims, they have been ruling over India for a very long time, and that grudge and that hatred of the hardliners, the hardliner Hindus, and the RSS Hindutva, I must say, not the Hinduism. Hinduism has nothing to do with the fueling hate towards any other religion, I must say here. But it's the Hindutva ideology that is actually promoting hate towards the other minorities. I mean, same is the case with the Christians as well. Even Dalits are not prevented when it comes to hatred, facing hatred from the Hindutva ideology. So Muslims, Sikhs, all of them, they are facing the same hatred. Don't you think that there is a historic baggage in that context as well, that they have that complex in them still fitted in, which actually tells them that almost for the 1,000 years, Muslims, they have been ruling over us. Now is the time that the majority of the population, we will inflict hatred amongst them against that specific faith, Islam, that has been ruling over us, and now is the time to avenge all of them 1,000 years. Do you think that that has a lot to do with it? Because when we see the decisions taking place against the Babri Masjid, and then we see the who is allowed to be a citizen of India and who is not allowed to be a citizen of India, all of these decisions, they are based on that particular hatred, which is based upon that revenge they want to take from this particular religion in India. And do you think that this whole politics which is being played, and in recent times whatever the decisions started coming out related to Babri Masjid and then Ram Mandir and then imposition of Citizen Amendment Act, all of these decisions by the BJP government, they have everything to do with their election campaign on the basis of hatred, sir?
And Dr. Saab, allow me to actually add one more question to the plate, especially because it is always great to see you here, always great to listen to you as well. And you actually, because right now we are talking about Indian elections, I wanted to actually focus on the procedural mundaner issues that you also actually highlighted, from VVPAT to the electoral bonds. It seems that the Indian Supreme Court has found its latent courage of late, and that is not all. Even in the Election Commission, we saw the Election Commissioner Goel actually stepping down. With all those balls in the air, do you think that is it not too late for these things to have an impact on the upcoming elections, sir?
Thank you very much. Very core questions, and I would like to preface it by saying, although you're speaking from a Pakistani point of view, but you don't know the half of it. In your position, I would ask even tougher questions because I have the database and I speak from that point. It would be wrong, in fact, to say Mr. Modi has a historical baggage or his party has a historical baggage. He and the RSS are living in a parallel universe. They have reinvented history. They have merged mythology with history, with datelines, and you haven't a clue from where they would say. And his gestures show the ridiculousness of it. He takes a dive into the bottom of the ocean and is doing some puja there. He climbs the mountain. I do not know which constituency. I mean, I know, but I don't think the Indian Hindu is as crazy as he and the RSS presume it to be. But let me just say why I always say Mr. Modi and the RSS. Mr. Modi, by virtue of being the Prime Minister in control of all the police and investigation agencies, brings to the RSS ideology the state power. So let us not separate them. They invented it, but there's the South for states which have a pretty large number of people. There are areas elsewhere in the country where there are pockets of deep resistance. So it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be easy at all. And what they will claim 400 seats, but they're going to have to fight every seat. They'll have to fight every seat. They won 7 out of 7 in Delhi. They can't repeat it at all. I mean, you can't win 8 with those 7 seats. And this time, the Congress and its arch enemy, AAP, are fighting together. 4 plus 3. They may win all 7, and BJP would be instantly short of 7. Punjab is today AAP. If BJP is going to have a tough fight, even in the north. The south is totally ruled out. Kerala, it won't get a single seat. Tamil Nadu, it won't get a single seat. Karnataka, it will get some. And in the Telugu state, some. But not what it's dreaming of. It is buying people in Bihar. It is buying parties in Orissa. That itself shows a sense of desperation. When you're ditching your friends, buying new friends, you are not confident of retaining the seats you have. You have sacked a fully functioning government that you were praising 12 hours earlier, the government of Haryana. Your own man, you sacked him to bring in a change of face and a subtle class or caste construction. Mr. Modi may show on his huge chest, behind all his bakhtar, his steel vests, he may show a certain courage, but deep inside he must know that this could well be a wipe-out issue also for the BJP. He may target high, and it's happened before. It's happened to the Congress before. It has happened to Mr. Bajpayee before. Indian people sometimes take corrective action that can be extremely punitive. And we are, as I say we, as those who oppose Mr. Modi openly, so opposing him on a Pakistani channel is not a deep issue with me. We think that he has committed technical mistakes against the Constitution, against the institutions, and he'll have to pay for it. We think he has taken the people for a ride on all other things, and he will have to pay for that particular. He has impacted the federal structure. You're talking of India as a democracy, it is there. But the democracy in India is based on a federal structure. I come from the deep south. I live in the extreme north. All of us need devolution of fund, devolution of power, the voice to be heard. He has touched very, very raw nerves. And the price of that will be far more than he can garner by Islamophobia, by pushing Christians and Sikhs now onto the margins. How much can he win by that? He loses more. Above all, he loses in the eyes of the West, of his friends, in the US, of his friends, and you can say relatives, in the UK, in Japan, in Australia. All those who have upheld him internationally, embracing him and pinning medals to his chest. He has more than shamed himself, I think. And if he hasn't shamed them, then shame on them, I say.
Right. Regarding the electoral bonds and VVPads, I just wanted you to actually comment where it is leading logically. What happens to the electoral bond issue? And then why is it that VVPads are not being reproduced as was expected?
On the electoral bonds, the Supreme Court has caught the State Bank of India on a terrible wrong foot. They have to tell in a day or two, and the Election Commission has to put on its website who gave what money, not to who. But that can be found out very easily by, if all the opposition tell us how much money they got, then we can total it up and the rest of the money has gone to the BJP. It takes a class 2 child to total up the data. So that is not very much of an issue. The point was, did that money to the corporate sector under duress, the money from the corporate sector, did it change policies? Was there a probe? You give something, I give you back. Did it warp the whole concept? Please remember, Rajiv Gandhi lost his government for 60 crore of rupees, which is chicken feed. It's chicken feed, less than chicken feed. And other governments also have scared. So here, the corruption part is only the changes in the structures, in the constitutional structures, in the national transparency, those are critical. On the VVPAT, also the same issue. I personally studied science. I mean, computers can be hacked, but we will have lakhs of computers here. They possibly can be hacked. But so but the election booth can be captured. It takes 5 thugs to capture election booth. Instead of shoving paper, they will be pressing keys. So those are issues on which we hope there'll be transparency, and the election commission will crack down. At the moment, there's no election commission, and till it's announced, how can we say that we have even faith on it?
Exactly. Ambassador Baloch, earlier you highlighted one particular point which was quite attracted towards me as well. That was related to, of course, when it comes to Modi's politics, especially related to its geopolitics. We know that a kind of government that comes up from the Modi side, BJP is always backed by RSS and Hindutva ideology. In that context, we know that Modi's government so far, previous 2 terms, he has been very hegemonic towards the immediate neighbors, the smaller neighbors. I mean, we saw that it took place against the Bangladesh. It took place, he had a very tough stance towards Sri Lanka as well. And then its northeastern neighbors as well. Everyone was facing the brunt. And if we look at towards our own country, of course, we know that February 2019 was the point when, of course, Pakistan experienced the hegemonic behavior of India, but of course Pakistan gave a befitting reply that actually resulted in silencing their guns for a certain time. Now when we are heading towards another election, right after the election that has taken place in Pakistan, and the government has been formed, and government is willing to, of course, sit with India and negotiate peace, do you expect from Modi's upcoming government, on the basis that the political slogans which we have been hearing in recent past, they were all against Pakistan, all against Muslims and the minorities. Owing to these facts, do you hope that there will be any peace, or sitting with Modi, Pakistan should be expecting that?
Ambassador Saab, whenever Raja Faisal is enthusiastic, I have to actually tail his question. So I'm going to do it again. India has recently operationalized CAA, Citizenship Amendment Act. Do you think that it is also going to have an impact on its foreign policy, given that the only exemption is Muslims, and we see that NRC issue might be applied to actually declare many Indian Muslims non-citizens, and that's how persecution can take place?
I think there are 2 or 3 streams of thought in your questions. So first of all, let me just clarify that the bonhomie between India and the Western power is completely insulated from what happens in India. That is the irony of today's international politics. They used to worry, I think, several decades back, that what is the quality of governance, what is the quality of democracy, what is the condition of the minorities, but no more. That moral fiber, that ethical fiber of the Western world in terms of their relationship is no more. It is just simply their national interest, Western interests, and geostrategic interests. If they are met, they couldn't care less. If they couldn't care less about the about the killing of 31,000 Palestinians in 3 months. They couldn't care less, in my view, of hundreds of thousands of people who have been killed in Kashmir, or, God forbid, might be lynched in India or killed in India later, when really this entire Hindutva takes its further shape like the Nazis. Because that is how Nazis started. It was all about the thought process. When they brought the hatred to that level, definitely that the hated segment of the society was the only solution they thought was to physically eliminate them. God forbid it should not happen. So I think we should not be, sort of entertain this kind of ideology, this ideal situation that if India is not a good democracy, if India suppresses its minorities, West will somehow react. No, they will not. Coming to the question, Mr. Pitafi, about the citizenship, I think it is to do with their electoral dynamics and internal political dynamics of what BJP is doing. As I said, that it is building its structures, legal and constitutional and administrative, to really kind of infiltrate the ideology of Hindutva into the state system of India. I mean, the nature of the state they want to change, and that is where the worry comes. But that also makes BJP government untenable. I am kind of an optimist that when in a society, brave people with moral courage of Dr. John Dayal exist, who still can sort of tell the truth to the world, I don't think BJP would have the last laugh. The last laugh will be of the freedom lovers. The last laugh will be of democracy lovers. The last laugh will be of the freedom of expression. And last laugh will be many John Dayals in India. And I wish them all the very best there. We all are with you. We are all with you. We actually oppose oppression of minorities anywhere in the world, not only in India, anywhere, even in our own country. If something happens from the state to our minority, whether Christian, Hindu, Sikh, anyone on any other discrimination on any term, we oppose it and we will stand by it. So I tell you, the civil society in India and in Pakistan and in South Asia is good enough. We don't hear them because there's a big cacophony of this populist leaders. The old media has been unfortunately so captured by the corporate sector in India, as well as to some extent in other countries in South Asia, that the voices of reason, the voices of humanity, of democracy, the voices of what is right, and especially the civil society has been made shrill. But that shrill voice will one day definitely be heard by the world, by the people themselves. I say that the destruction of such a retrogressive ideology will come from within India. That is my understanding. Whenever I discuss with my friends, I say, just wait and see. Do not react. Do not overreact. So the third, I think, extreme that you did was what will be the relationship between India and Pakistan after the elections. I think we have to go a long way in getting India to its normal existence as a society, as a democracy, as an inclusive system. It might take one or two more elections, but I am pretty sure that this subcontinent, the people of this subcontinent, about 1.5 billion, would one day see a very peaceful and a very, very democratic South Asia, inshallah.
Amin to that.
Right, of course, as Ambassador Baloch mentioned, all praise to Dr. John Dayal. Of course, anyone who advocates for human rights should be praised, and their courage and bravery should be praised, and of course, how they stand up for the rights of the minorities, the rights of every person, and the fundamental rights that are enshrined in international laws as well. Of course, I'd like to thank both our guests who took part in this conversation, G.R. Baloch, former ambassador, and Dr. John Dayal, Indian human rights activist. I'd like to thank both of you for your time, and very articulate as always. Moving on to our second segment, we'll talk about, and we have talked about this in our previous episodes as well, the economic challenges and how economy should be given a priority over politics. We see in the domestic landscape, these are times when the opposition is adamant about getting what they want, no matter how or what they have to do to get it. And in that regard, we've seen a lot of skirmishes going on, and we see a lot of confrontation that's been going on as well. And there are differences between both the sides that they can't seem to move on from. Raja Faisal, considering these times when the government is so adamant about going to the IMF, putting in economic reforms, making the economic cycle move forward, how do you think the opposition's attitude towards the government's policies, the opposition's attitudes towards national interests, they are affecting economic growth of the country, and how they should refrain from it, because the country needs dialogue and the country needs coordination and unity at the moment?
Yeah, Rafae, obviously, if we talk about the Pakistan's politics, and economy, we have been highlighting it since last year, and be it opposition, be it the government benches, treasury benches, all of them, they are Pakistanis. And of course, they need to sit down together, and of course, they have to they have to be aware of the facts. Ground facts are that Pakistan is struggling in terms of economy, and there are challenges. As I started with that since last year we have been obviously talking about it. First, we used to talk about that how to restore democracy. Of course, we need to head towards the election. Eventually, we did, and then after the successful election we had, right after that, of course, we know that all of the parties, they had chunks, and two of the parties, they joined hands for a better Pakistan, to form a government, and that coalition government is on the treasury benches, and they are making sure that they can do everything, every single thing to, of course, put Pakistan back on track, and the economy that has been suffering since few years, that can be actually revived in Pakistan. And we know that the very first challenge which they were having, that was economy, and for that, of course, they are currently meeting with the IMF, and and trying to, of course, negotiate a bailout package with them, and that is pivotal for Pakistan. This is a time where, of course, all of the parties, be it opposition, be it the treasury benches, all of them, they need to be sitting together for a better Pakistan. And if it comes, if any wrong thing comes from the opposition benches, then my advice to even opposition benches would be that there is one thing I'm pretty much sure that they will be trying to get some sort of political consensus on ground, which we are not seeing right now. But at least for a better Pakistan, think about the masses at large. Think about the people at large who are facing problems in terms of inflation, in terms of many other challenges, domestic challenges they are facing. Right now, there is one consensus which is required at urgent basis, and that is economic consensus. When I say economic consensus, I mean now when the IMF is in Pakistan, nothing should be signaled to them from any of the sides, be it opposition or be it the treasury benches, that Pakistan is lacking a harmony within on the matters of IMF, on the matters of Pakistan's economy. So economic consensus that must be there, and all of the parties, I would request all of the parties to have that consensus, so that for once at least we can put Pakistan back on track, so that there are people, there are populations at large who, of course, need a bit of a breather, and that economic breather must be given to people of Pakistan.
Right, definitely. Farrukh Pitafi, I'd like to hear your views, considering that Ishaq Dar has also signaled towards unity between all political parties. There's talks of Charter of Economy as well. What's your views regarding the whole scenario, and how important do you think this Charter of Economy or the unity that Ishaq Dar has called for is for all the parties?
Right. You're actually quoting the Foreign Minister on Charter of Economy.
Yes.
That's interesting. But regarding the IMF visit, first of all, before coming to the studio, I saw a statement coming from them that this visit is essentially about the last tranche of the existing SBA, the standby arrangement. So for the next package, we'll have to, I think the finance minister will have to go there and then negotiate the terms for the new one. So let us hope that it concludes. The good news today, and of all the days, I'm not going to actually pontificate on the importance of unity, because today is a good day. The chief minister of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa actually met with the prime minister. Yes, the very same CM who had said that I don't actually acknowledge that he is a legitimate PM. But today he met with him, and they kind of resolved the issues that were unresolved, especially if you remember last time when Pakistan had the EFF, the Extended Fund Facility, which actually converted into this SBA. At that time, there was, talk of certain revenues that were owed to Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. So there have been guarantees, and I think that it is great news.
Right.
When Pakistani politicians are not scoring their own goal, I think at that time, like they actually wrote a letter to IMF that you actually spoke of, they are capable of rising to the occasion and coming together. Remember, Pakistan's biggest issue and economy at this moment is not merely just economy per se. It is the most existential issue at this moment. Whenever we have disagreements and we have impasses, what happens is that usually people suffer. This is the argument that I keep on making to my Indian friends as well when they say that we have been trying to isolate Pakistan. And I ask them, what do you get out of trying to actually make common people on the ground suffer, right? When it comes to Pakistan's national interest, the number one national interest right now, and that is also function of any state, not government, any state, is the well-being of the common man on the street. Right now, Pakistan has suffered a lot. Pakistanis have been facing inflation and grinding poverty. It never stopped after COVID shutdowns and economic crises. I think that today, what I've seen coming from the opposition is a good indication. Whether we will have a charter of economy or not, we still have to wait and see. But there is one thing that is clear. Beyond IMF, after getting the EFF from IMF, even then we have a lot of work to do, especially to ensure that all those bad assets that keep on bleeding money are actually offloaded, and then you have the economic activity in the country that brings down inflation and improves the economic situation in the country.
True.
Right, very rightly put, Farrukh, as always, and very articulate with your views, and of course, it is. Thank you for the appreciation. And but what I gather from what you said, rising to the occasion and coming together. That's how it's going to. What is the need of the hour in the country, and how the country is going to pull through what the challenges that it seems that it's going to be addressing in the future, and how it needs to move on from that politics of agitation and actually move towards dialogue and coordination, so that the national interests of the country can of course be prioritized first. With that, unfortunately, we're short on time as every day, but we'll conclude our today's show. Of course, in the first segment, we talked about India's elections and the new laws there concerning the minorities, and we discussed different angles of that regarding the reforms in the electoral process. We talked about EVMs, the polarization there, and all the policies of the BJP and the BJP versus Congress element as well. In the second segment, we talked about how the need of the hour is rising to the occasion for Pakistani politicians, and they need to sit together with unity, coordinate, and put national interests as the first priority. With that, we'll see you tomorrow and conclude today's episode. Till then, take care.